Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Joshua Barnes, coming to you live from the Firstpost studios. First, let's take a look at the headlines. Iran's president warns domestic suppliers against hoarding or overpricing goods. This comes as Tehran rolls out high-stakes subsidy reforms during deadly nationwide protests against economic hardship. Venezuela's interior minister says that at least 100 people died in the US attack which removed President Nicolas Maduro from power last week. Venezuelan officials say a large part of Maduro's security contingent was killed in cold blood. The US detains Ghana's fugitive former finance minister Ken Ofori-Atta. He is wanted at home on suspicion of corruption. Ofori-Atta has been in the US since January last year to receive medical treatment. China confirms the extradition of accused scam boss Chen Shi from Cambodia. This comes after he was indicted by the US over an alleged multi-billion-dollar fraud. And Australia is set to hold a Royal Commission inquiry into the Bondi Beach mass shooting where at least 15 people were killed. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese calls it the country's most powerful public inquiry. Hello and welcome. Our top story is from South Africa, a country which is certainly not in Donald Trump's good books. But in this new year, Pretoria might be trying to change that. How? By backing the US Afrikaner Refugee program. The program has been mired in controversy since Trump rolled it out last year. At the centre of it are Afrikaners. Donald Trump has falsely claimed that Afrikaners are victims of genocide within South Africa. Trump says there's a white genocide, which is why he wants to bring them to the US as refugees. Ramaphosa's government has strongly denied these allegations. Until now, South Africa has been totally against Trump's Afrikaner program. Pretoria called it deeply flawed, even comparing it to apartheid. But now, South Africa seems to be softening its stance. According to media reports, US and South African officials met in December. There, the two sides agreed that South Africa would not interfere in the Afrikaner Refugee program. Now, that's a big shift. How has South Africa justified it? Well, according to media reports, Pretoria said that though it did not agree with the unsubstantiated white genocide claims, South Africans have the right to move to whichever country they want to, and the government won't interfere. This reported agreement comes just weeks after South African officials raided a US refugee centre in Johannesburg. 7 Kenyans were arrested and deported. Pretoria accused the Kenyan nationals of working illegally on tourist visas. 2 US refugee officers were also briefly detained. The raid drew the Trump administration's fury. The US called it unacceptable and slammed South Africa for interference. Washington said that despite the raid, its refugee program remains unaffected. The US State Department has claimed an uptick in the number of Afrikaners arriving in the US. It said that more Afrikaner refugees arrived in the US in December than any previous month, and even higher numbers are expected in January. Around 1,000 Afrikaners have arrived in the US since May 2025. Since Donald Trump took office last year, ties between South Africa and the US have nosedived, and there have been no signs of improvements ever since. Last year in May, Trump hosted Ramaphosa at the White House. The meeting quickly turned into a showdown, with Trump accusing the Ramaphosa government of discriminating against white people and snatching the land of white farmers.
A lot of people are very concerned with regard to South Africa, and that's really the purpose of the meeting, and we'll see how that turns out. But we have many people that feel they're being persecuted, and they're coming to the United States. So we take from many locations if we feel there's persecution or genocide going on.
And what followed? Trump imposed the 30% tariff on South African goods, skipped the G20 meeting held in Johannesburg, banned South Africa from the upcoming G20 summit in Miami, and expulsion from a trade deal remains on the table. Pretoria is now making diplomatic manoeuvres to ease tensions. Now that South Africa has reportedly agreed not to interfere in US refugee operations, Will it change the trajectory of ties between the two countries? And joining us to break this down is Lauren Landau, a senior researcher with the African Centre for Migration and Society at the University of Witwatersrand, live from Nairobi in Kenya. Welcome to Firstpost Africa.
Thank you. It's great to be with you.
Let's start with that question then. Is this a potential turning point in relations that we've said already have nosedived between South Africa and the United States?
I think South African politics is a mix of ideology and pragmatism. And in this case, what we're seeing is pragmatism winning out. The government saying, this is not the hill on which we want to die. The relationship with the United States is critical. Trade is critical. And this serves a dual purpose. It can help renew relationships with the United States, open up trading, maybe reduce some of the tariffs. But it's also a way of getting people who are against the regime, against the government in South Africa, to leave. And I think those people within the country are deeply unpopular. Opening a way for them to exit the country doesn't come with any costs politically for Ramaphosa.
Let's have a look at those who may have criticised Ramaphosa's stance on the US, specifically as relations have broken down. How do you think the response will be if these reported easing of pressure and condemnation of a programme, a refugee programme, that was previously there?
I think it depends on the broader suite of actions that the government takes over the next months. What we've seen is the South African government has overtly condemned, for example, the invasion and the abduction of Maduro in Venezuela. So it suggests that the government remains principled, that it will remain as strong when it comes to international law and protecting its sovereignty and its position against the United States. But if it is able to open trade, create jobs, try to facilitate movement of people between the two countries, I think this is a win for South Africa.
Lauren, of course, Trump has made claims of a white genocide in South Africa. Does this in any way validate those claims?
I think that everybody knows that those claims are absurd. I think most Americans know that they're absurd, and every South African, apart from a very small minority, believes that they are a ridiculous claim. I think most South Africans will see this as acquiescence to the United States in a certain way, but that the pragmatic principles behind it, that the need to promote trade, the need to create jobs, the need to maintain a good position in international affairs far outweighs that. We all know what's going on here, and I think that will protect Ramaphosa from too many critics.
And Lauren, to finish, of course, if reports are correct and the Ramaphosa government does step back on the Afrikaner Refugee regime and programme, do you think that this potentially opens the door for Trump to push further in the future?
Well, I think that Trump will push as far as Trump wishes to push on any issue. What we've seen in his relationship with South Africa or his relationship with even NATO allies is that he would change day by day. This definitely legitimizes him on one level, but for Trump himself, I'm not sure he'll notice. I'm not sure that it will really change his behavior.
Lauren, thank you ever so much for joining us and providing insight on Firstpost Africa.
It's a pleasure.
Another African country in Trump's bad books is Somalia. In his latest attack, Trump has paused all assistance to its government. Why? Well, the US has accused Somali officials of destroying a World Food Programme warehouse, which Washington funded. The Trump administration also accused Mogadishu of illegally seizing 76 metric tons of donor-funded food aid meant for vulnerable Somalis. Since coming to office last year, Trump has slashed foreign aid expenditures and dismantled US aid. So, the impact of this move is not yet clear. But this action is not merely about food aid. It reflects Trump's growing hostility towards Somalia. He has been attacking the country and its people left, right and centre. Trump has shown no signs of softening his stance, and Washington's ally Israel has sort of joined this tirade. Last month, Israel became the first country to recognise Somaliland. It is a breakaway region in Somalia. Benjamin Netanyahu's decision angered Somalia and triggered global backlash. Initially, even Trump refused to back Israel. He asked, does anyone even know what Somaliland is? But later, his envoy to the UN supported the Israeli recognition of Somaliland.
Colleagues, meetings such as today's distract from serious work to address issues of international peace and security, including in both the Middle East and the Horn of Africa. Israel has the same right to conduct diplomatic relations as any other sovereign state.
Now coming to the Somalis living in the United States. In recent weeks, the Trump administration has ramped up immigration enforcement raids in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It is the city with the largest Somali community in the US. Trump has accused the Somali community of being involved in an alleged large-scale public benefit fraud in Minnesota. The White House has hinted that Trump may even revoke US citizenship of Somalis involved in the alleged fraud scheme.
Beautiful land, that beautiful state. It's a hellhole right now. And the Somalians should be out of here. They've destroyed our country. And all they do is complain, complain, complain.
Last year in November, Trump also ended temporary protected status for Somali immigrants. He accused them of gang violence and asked them to go back to their country. Trump has also made it difficult for Somalis to enter the US. Somalia is one of the countries on the US travel ban list.
So Somalia is considered by many to be the worst country on earth. I don't know. I haven't been there. I won't be there anytime soon, I hope. But what Somalia, what the Somalian people have done to Minnesota is not even believable.
And Donald Trump has also launched what many see as racist attacks on Ilhan Homer. She is a Democratic representative from Somalia who arrived in the US as a child refugee. Trump said that she should be thrown out of the country.
Ilhan Omar is garbage. She's garbage. Her friends are garbage. These aren't people that work. These aren't people that say, let's go, come on, let's make this place great. These are people that do nothing but complain.
Donald Trump's attacks on Somalia show no signs of abating. What will be his next action, and how will it affect Somalia and Somalis living in the US? Now that remains to be seen. Assassination plot targeting its junta leaders. Authorities say the plan was set for January the 3rd, with the prime target being the head of state, Captain Ibrahim Traore. Officials claim the attempt was part of a broader effort to topple the government and throw the country back into instability.
On January 3, 2026, at 11 p.m., a plan was in place to destabilize the country. This was to be carried out through a series of targeted assassinations of civilian and military authorities, beginning with the neutralization of Comrade Captain Ibrahim Traore, head of state, president of Faso, either at point-blank range or by an operation to mine his residence.
And Burkina Faso security minister says the man behind the latest plots is a familiar name. It's Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba, the same general Traore ousted from power in 2022. Damiba has been living in exile in Togo. He allegedly orchestrated the plan, raised funds and recruited both civilians and soldiers for the attempted coup. Officials also claim that Ivory Coast financed the attempted takeover.
A large portion of the funding comes from Ivory Coast, whose most recent operation amounts to $125,000. So, I would also like to point out that arrests are ongoing, as is the dismantling of the networks.
Ivory Coast are yet to comment on these accusations. But Burkina Faso officials say intelligence services intercepted video footage showing suspects discussing how they plan to kill Traore and other senior officials. They alleged that after the assassinations, the plan was to disable Burkina Faso's drone launch base to prevent a military response, before foreign forces could move in on the ground. Authorities say the threat has been neutralised and security around key leaders has now been tightened. This was not an isolated incident. Reports suggest that since taking office in 2022, Traore has survived at least 18 assassination or coup attempts, with some sources estimating it as high as 30. But the irony is hard to miss. Traore himself came to power through a military coup. In September 2022, at just 34 years of age, he overthrew Damiba amid public anger over a surge in terrorist attacks that had killed thousands and displaced millions of people. Since then, Traore has moved quickly to consolidate his power. He has distanced Burkina Faso from France and deepened cooperation with Russia. He has joined Mali and Niger to form the Alliance of Sahel States. His government has expanded state control over strategic sectors including mining and drone operations, framed as a push for national sovereignty. Critics, however, accuse the regime of silencing media, arresting dissenters, and in some cases forcing journalists, activists and medics to the front lines as punishment to fight terrorists. Rights groups say repression has deepened since the coup, with no room for criticism of the government. Despite that, Traoré continues to command strong support, especially amongst the youth. His pan-African message and rejection of Western influence have resonated with a generation that feel abandoned by traditional leaders. With another reported plot now foiled, Burkina Faso's leadership says it remains in control. For now, Captain Ibrahim Traoré holds the power. But in a country defined by coups and a region known for its instability, the question is how long can that control last? And for our final story, Botswana is launching a controversial new scheme in an attempt to boost an economy hit by falling diamond sales. The offering, a golden passport coming at a cost of $100,000. Botswana is joining a list of countries that have or are offering passports for cash. Grenada in the Caribbean requires a donation of around $235,000 per application. St. Lucia, another Caribbean island nation, offers a family of up to 4 citizens with starting costs of $240,000. Malta, an island nation in Europe, had required at least $800,000 in investment before the EU Court of Justice ended the scheme. While US President Donald Trump last year announced his gold card visa program starting at a cost of $1 million. And with Botswana positioning themselves and their golden passport at a lower end in terms of cost, there appears to already be significant interest from abroad. Armand Arton, chief executive of the firm marketing Botswana's new scheme, says that around 1,000 people have already registered their interest. Applicants from India, Zimbabwe, and the United States are in the top 3 nations of those interested. Arton highlighted the surprising level of interest from G7 nations, with engagements initially expected from China and Arab countries. Now, the Golden Passport scheme still has to go through Parliament. A vote is expected within months. Reportedly, President Duma Boko's aim is to attract up to 5,000 families over a 5-year period, therefore generating Botswana $500 million. Now, a Botswanan passport grants visa-free access to 51 countries, mostly in Southern Africa and the Caribbean. In contrast, St. Lucia's passport grants visa-free access to more than 90 countries. And critics say these programs open the door to corruption, tax evasion and money laundering, while industry experts have cast doubts over the number of families who will actually end up paying that $100,000 fee.
I don't think this will be popular. This thing is all about politics, so politicians might have their own people they want to attract.
So why is Botswana opening up its citizenship for a fee? Well, as mentioned, Botswana is suffering from a drop in natural diamond demand. Botswana is the world's largest diamond producer in terms of value due to its high-quality stones. Diamond sales make up 1/3 of the country's GDP and nearly all of its foreign export earnings. Natural diamond sales across the world have slumped with a surge of cheaper, lab-grown alternatives entering the market. And Botswana is scrambling to brace for those potential losses. President Boko's governments have recently courted Russian investments in their mining industry, while also seeking zero tariffs from the US on diamond exports to the North American nation. And this golden passport is another roll of the dice for an administration that swept to power in 2024 on a range of populist policies. Therefore, a stuttering economy is not an option for President Boko. But is this controversial cash for passport scheme the solution? Well, the jury is still out. In a nation where diamonds were forever, a new golden opportunity is emerging. But it will cost the world $100,000. That's all we have on the show for today. We'll see you again tomorrow at the same time. Until then, thank you for watching.